Many inquiries arise when we question why Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus, and various answers have been given. Some argue that Judas did not accept the spiritual nature of the kingdom established by Jesus, trying to force him to assume power by declaring himself publicly as the Messiah in a nationalist sense, aiming to rule the nation. Others suggest that he was trying to protect Jesus from his own messianic pretensions, as if he were a friend trying to protect the other. There are also those who claim that Judas betrayed Jesus motivated by his frustrated ambitions to participate in a future earthly government established by the Messiah. When he realized that this would not happen, faced with Jesus' announcements of imminent death, he decided to betray the Lord with his wounded pride. Some argue that Judas Iscariot was simply powerless in the face of the role that had been determined for him, almost absolving him of the guilt of betraying Jesus. In fact, some completely absolve him of this guilt, going so far as to elect him as a kind of saint or hero who ended up being saved in the end. Before we understand why Judas betrayed Jesus, we need to consider how the biblical texts designate him. Without hesitation, the biblical writers call him a thief, traitor, and someone who was an instrument in the hands of the devil, John 6 verses 70 to 71. Jesus mentions him as the son of perdition, John 17 verse 12. In the act of betrayal, undoubtedly included were the traits of his reprehensible character, such as ambition, frustration, selfishness, greed, covetousness, and pride. All these sinister characteristics converged in the terrible impenitence of that traitor. Although Judas was apparently close to Jesus, in reality, there was such a great distance between them. He never believed in the Lord, John 6 verse 64, his utmost devotion was only to see him as a teacher, Matthew 26 verse 25. Pastor William Hendrickson, in his New Testament commentary, observes that, between the selfish heart of Judas and the infinitely generous heart of Jesus there was an abyss so immense. Judas would have to beg the Lord to grant him the grace of regeneration and full renewal, a request that the traitor perversely refused to make, or he would have to offer his collaboration to rid himself of Jesus. In the face of all this wickedness, a doubt naturally arises: could he have acted differently? This doubt leads us to the next point we need to consider. The answer to this question needs to be understood from two aspects: divine sovereignty and human responsibility. In addition to everything that has been said about Judas Iscariot's character, it is also true that in the Old Testament we find prophecies about the person who would betray Jesus Christ and the act of betrayal itself, Zechariah 11 verse 12, and the New Testament reveals that Judas Iscariot was that person. Jesus mentioned such prophecies when he said, "The Son of Man goes as it has been determined," Luke 22 verse 22. Jesus is affirming that everything that happened to him, including his betrayal, arrest, and death, is in accordance with God's eternal decree. If the verse ended here, someone might try to advocate Judas' innocence in the face of God's sovereignty, but that does not happen. In the same sentence where Jesus points to God's eternal decrees revealed in the scriptures, he also clearly highlights human responsibility. "But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed," Luke 22 verse 22. The text in Matthew adds something more: "It would have been better for that man if he had not been born," Matthew 26 verse 24. Judas' guilt was so great that the only way he would not have been guilty would have been if he had not been born. But he was born, he betrayed Jesus, and the scriptures were fulfilled. Even though it is difficult to understand, the biblical truth is that God is sovereign, and man is responsible. God's sovereignty and human responsibility go hand in hand in the scriptures. We can say that Judas acted freely within his depravity. He was as free as he could be within what his fallen nature allowed him. By his own ignorance, he chose not to recognize an act of sincere worship, John 12 verses 4 to 5. By his own choice, he chose to steal the resources that had been entrusted to him, John 12 verse 6, and, by his own responsibility, he was able to betray Jesus. Therefore, divine predestination, in relation to everything that happened, did not deprive Judas Iscariot of a path of repentance, it only confirmed him in his own evil and perverse path. The sinner cannot blame divine predestination for his condemnation to hell, but rather his own life of sin, Romans 9 verses 19 to 20. Judas was so aware of his attitude that, even hearing harsh words from Jesus about the person who would betray him, he did not give up his plan. With astonishing hypocrisy, he still had the audacity to ask, "Is it I, Rabbi?" Matthew 26 verse 25. Therefore, Jesus was betrayed because it was determined by God from eternity, and Judas betrayed him because he was a wicked person. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.